Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Matt Hunter, your host for Anarchist Revolution. So today I want to go over, I live in Ontario, and I want to break how corrupt, I think most of us already out there know, but I want to show with the articles how corrupt the Toronto police force and policing in general is today. So article number 1, well 3 articles about it, but this newest scandal, I'll get them out here, so is the Star is covering that our Ontario Justice of the Peace, which is our judges, are openly hiding their disclosure. Their complaint process, they are hiding all the complaints that are coming in. They're keeping it secret. They're not releasing it to the public. Let me just give you guys a zoom in here. So as you can see, Ontario is keeping secret disclosure for Justice of the Peace. I know this personally. I've put in a complaint for a judge. The judges up here are awful. There are a few good ones, but for the most part, they're just working for the system. They put away people for victimless crimes, and they treat you pretty rudely, like you're a second-class citizen. And I put in a personal complaint with a judge up here in Ontario, and he supposedly took a leap of absence and no longer works for them, so they can't discipline him. Now, as the scandals come out through the Star, they're openly hiding complaints on the judges. Why? Because if the public knew how many complaints were filed on the Ontario judges, maybe action would be taken. Maybe people would realize how corrupt the justice system is. Moving on to the next article this morning. Only 4 judges have been fired since 1990, and it's 2014. So only 4 Justice of the Peaces in Ontario. And I can name multiple occasions of where they're corrupt and they should have been fired, but only 4 in the last 20-some years have been fired. You may ask, why were those 4 fired? Well, half of them were sexual assaults. So they kind of did it to themselves. It wasn't a member of the public who said, hey, this judge is corrupt, help us here. No, it was from his own wrongdoing, and then that person he did that to, the sexual assault, was so blatantly obvious they had to fire him. And the other was helping a friend on his case, so secretly trying to get someone off, and including behind closed doors. So 4 judges have been fired in the last 20-some years. Well, it makes a lot of sense if they're hiding all their complaint processes. How are you going to find a judge guilty or hold them accountable if they're hiding all the complaints being filed? It makes a lot more sense of why only 4 has been fired in the last 20-some years. So our Justice of the Peace and our judges are completely unaccountable and out of control here in Ontario, and something has to be done. Next article. Toronto Police Board is working on making strip searches more accountable. Bullcrap. Now let me go into the next article about this. So, a Toronto police officer stated that Constable Salvito told the court on December 11th that he has stripped hundreds of people completely naked, which is against police policy laid out in the Supreme Court. Here's a Star article written in our mainstream paper down here in Ontario. An officer admitting in court on the record that they are strip searching people illegally, not following the procedures where they're supposed to remove 1 piece of clothing at a time, so that it's the most humane way to do it to the person, so they're not humiliated by stripped down completely naked. Me personally, I was a victim of this strip search. When I was arrested and targeted by the police for my political activism, and I was put in jail for a night, I was strip searched. Had no drugs, had nothing like that, wasn't even arrested and brought in for that, but they strip searched me, of course. So I know all too well about the outrageous strip searching in Toronto. And the policing and why they strip search people is, if you ever studied any kind of torture tactics that they use overseas in the Iraqi, the desert, and the military people, what they do is they strip people down, and it's a humiliation tactic. It's to break your will. And when you're left there completely naked, you're vulnerable. And just imagine, this happens to women, this happens to teenagers, it happens to men, and it happens way, way too often. Here's an officer on the record in Toronto admitting he's going against Supreme Court code by stripping people, hundreds of them. Was he held accountable? Of course not. Next article. RCMP stops responding to the use of to FORA requests. So we have a right to do a Freedom of Information request on the police of what they have on us. And the RCMP is openly, as our Information Commissioner stated, not responding to these. The backlogs are huge, and they say they can't keep up with them. Well, of course they can't keep up with them. They rather spend their policing budget on putting police out on the street to harass victimless crimes and harass people than putting them at desk duties and getting the actual real things done, like filing FOIA requests, because they don't want to be held accountable through these FOIA requests. I personally know about this because I did a FOIA request, and I encourage any of my listeners and viewers out there to do Freedom of Information requests on you guys, regardless of whether you broke the law or think you broke the law, just to find out what the police, if anything, have on you. I did this, and it took me 1.5 years to get my FOIA request. And when I kept putting in complaints at the Freedom of Information office and with the RCMP about how long it was taking me to get my Freedom of Information request, all they would tell me is, well, don't feel bad, Mr. Hunter. We got people in front of you that have been waiting 4 years. And I'd say to the guy, well, so that is your explanation? That's your answer? Oh, so you guys have screwed the people for 4 years? Now that's acceptable? It's unacceptable, and something has to be done. Next article. SIU investigations into police civilian incidents on the rise. In 2012, Ontario's police watchdog probe a record high number of incidences in 2012, and they have continued to rise in the last 2 years. Incidences with police and civilians are on the rise. Toronto Star. Why? Because they are being told from top down to pick on civilians. They are being told to squash dissidents, to rein in tyranny. There's a reason why there's more police brutality today than there was 10, 20, 30 years ago. The people hasn't changed. Society's similar, but they're being told down that you're not going to be held accountable for your actions, so basically go free and do whatever you want and torment the civilian population. This is all to stir any kind of uprisings and to put... They want the people to fear the police. Because if the population fears the police are the ones that are kind of the goon thugs for the government. So they want to keep the population in fear, so they won't protest, they won't revolt, they won't do anything to stop this rampant corruption. Next article. Toronto Star. Are cops above the law? Toronto Star investigated 2 decades into SIU cases, found that police officers across the province are treated differently than civilians when they are accused of shooting, beating, and running over people and killing people. Some of them innocent bystanders. So right here in our public mainstream media, Toronto Star, stating that when a police officer kills someone or beats someone or runs over someone, even if they are 100% innocent in the course of proving that the officer did wrongdoing, they are never held accountable for these actions. But yet if you as a bystander does the exact same things that a cop does, you're going to jail for a long time. And it shows the double standard that they're being told from top down that you are protected. This is called the blue line, the thin blue line. They're a gang. The police officers are a gang, and they protect each other. They protect their own, and they will not hold each other accountable. The newest one, and I have met this guy, and I have a video on my YouTube channel about him. The Toronto police admit to mistake after finding holding cell video that they said that didn't exist. This was an incident of a severely disabled man, and an officer beat him up, roughed him up, and even flicked urine from his dick, basically pissed on this disabled guy who was in a wheelchair. And for multiple years, the disabled man was fighting, saying that this is what they did to him in there, and they said, oh, there's no tape here. And I know because I right now am trying to request information from the police of videos of what happened to me in custody with them. And they're saying, oh, we can't find the video. Of course they have the video, and of course they can find it. They don't want to give it to you. The same reason why it took years and years for this guy to finally get his video. And there you go, Toronto police officers pissing on disabled people. What kind of person are you to do such a thing? It's disgusting. And the officer should not only be fired, he should be thrown in a goddamn jail cell. Because it's disgusting. That's a clear violation of a person's human rights, and it's a crime against humanity to piss on a person, especially someone who's disabled. The cop was such a coward. He wouldn't even piss on someone who had the possibility of fighting back. He did it to someone who was disabled. It shows you the mentality of these people. It's disgusting. Next article. Public spat between Toronto police and SIU police brutality complaint. The Toronto police watchdog says that it's closed its investigation into allegations of a man that was beaten unconscious by the Toronto police officers last summer because the police were keeping the complaints secret. Of course they're keeping them secrets. When you put in a complaint with the police, it's the police who investigate themselves. The fact that we still allow that in today's society, that unaccountability process, is absurd. It's like, well, I don't even need to explain the absurdity in it. You know, you don't ask the police to investigate themselves. Of course they're not going to be held accountable. Of course they're not going to send you over paperwork that is openly going to get themselves fired and potentially lose their money and their job. Next one. Rare guilty verdict for cops and police brutality case. Now what's very disturbing about this, right on the mainstream article, okay, this is what people get in the newspaper here in Toronto. And they're reading, 2 police officer constables have been found guilty in causing assault and bodily harm, which legal observers say is extremely unusual. Continuing, it is extremely, very, very rare, said Barry Swardorn, a Toronto lawyer who has been a lawyer since 1963. So here's a lawyer in Toronto who's been working there pretty much since 1963, and has said that he has never, ever, very extremely rare, ever seen an officer held accountable. That's very disturbing, and it's published in our day, and it's published right in the newspaper, and there's not massive outcry of Toronto people doing something. Ontario, people aren't rising up and rebelling against this complete tyrannical policing system and justice system we have. Next one. Article, Toronto journalists witnessed police brutality at the G20. I don't need to go into much detail. The G20 made world news. Everyone knows what happened that day. Martial law was declared in Toronto because a few rich politicians were meeting, including in privacy, about how they're going to screw us over in policies and stuff. Okay? Everyone knows the Toronto G20 was open martial law declared on the city. Next article. Massive police corruption scandal. Trial to begin. 5 former Toronto Police drug squad officers have been accused of beating, robbing suspects of drugs, and large sums of money will go to trial Monday, and accused in conspiracy and alleged falsify official public records to cover their tracks. Of course there's corrupt rogue officers. Their whole profession consists on them violating people's rights and harassing people for victimless crimes. The majority of crimes committed are victimless, and it shouldn't even have any altercations with the police to begin with if we were in a free society. And the closing argument, or the closing article that I will talk to you guys today is this article, Why Did Durham Police Shoot and Kill a Naked Man? And this is an article detailing the people that have been shot and killed at the hands of the Toronto Police over the last decades. Sammy Tim is one of them. And the numbers just keep growing, and the incidences just keep growing. More and more people are getting beat up by the police. More and more people's rights are being violated. More and more the police are looking like our military instead of our local law enforcement that are there to serve and protect. And how come every time you have a right to protest here and protest to your government, but every time someone sets up a protest at any kind of amount of people, the police come out, riot squads come out? You don't live in a free society if when you're exercising your First Amendment right, riot police or police always come. If you were to try and start a protest tomorrow in Toronto, and let's say you got 100 people on Facebook or so that show up, guarantee there's going to be police escorts and riot police there, standing by. Why is that? Why are they, when the riot police show up, they look like they're dressed for war? It's because they are at war. We are at war with the police. Every day, they jail people for victimless crimes. We need to do something about the policing problem in this country. It's out of control. These were just stacks of articles that I just printed off before doing this video. I could do an hour. I could go on hours and hours and hours and literally hours showing you guys articles and incidences where the Toronto police and police globally around the world are constantly committing crimes against humanity. Okay? They are a number one threat. Okay? You're 8 times more likely to be killed by a police officer than you are a terrorist. And then you get the nerve of a police officer when he comes up to you, maybe say, oh, well, you seem a little nervous, so that gives me reasonable grounds. Or, oh, why are you bowing up to me? Or, why are you getting so mad at me? Why don't you just give me your ID and it'll all be fine, I'll go away. Because we're sick and tired of you people slaving the population. You guys are responsible every day for caging and killing innocent people. Anyone arrested right now and sitting in jail because of the drug war, The officers that put them there are crimes against humanity. You don't arrest someone for a victimless crime. But every day we see it happen. An officer, when he pulls you over for speeding on the road, he's a road pirate. He comes up to your window and tells you, pay this fine because I caught you doing 10 or 20 or whatever over the speed limit. Maybe your seatbelt wasn't on. But aren't you responsible for your own safety? Now, if you speed too much and your speeding results in an accident and you kill an innocent person because of that, we have laws and rules on the books to deal with people once that they've killed someone. Manslaughter. You know, stuff like that. It's not about the speeding. It's about the money they generate and revenue generation. So they can pay for the tanks and all these other things that they're buying now. Like I said, I could bring you articles. If you follow me on Facebook or Twitter, you'll see I post daily police brutality incidences. And it's just a small section of news I cover. I cover everything. But a major issue is the policing problem we see in the society. And cops out there, there's no such thing as a good cop anymore. You're in a profession that the profession demands you be a tyrant. A good cop would never arrest someone for a victimless crime. Because anything that's arrest the results out of a victimless crime is just generating revenue for the state. So I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know. Are we going to see a repeat of Nazi Germany? Will it take police and martial law literally dragging people out of their houses after a financial collapse or a natural disaster or something like that? Will it take martial law? Will it take people being pushed into cages like they were in the G20? For people to wake up and realize how corrupt things are. The Toronto police is out of control, policing worldwide is out of control, and it has to be reined in, something has to be done. This isn't a call for violence. I don't think it's smart to go out there and shoot a cop. Why? Because going and shooting that cop, you don't know who that cop was. And unless he aggressed against you, you don't have the right to aggress against him. And all that's going to happen is when people go out there and shoot cops, is well, they're going to send in more of their cop buddies to come and hunt you down like you see in the Justin Bork situation. And eventually, they will kill you or arrest you. Probably kill you. So the solution is not to go out there and just start shooting cops. Why? Because then they'll jump on the bandwagon and the mainstream media will spin it that activists and people like you and me that don't like cops and are pointing out the massive crimes against humanity they commit every day, well, they'll just label me as a domestic terrorist. They'll just label people like Justin Bork as domestic terrorists. It'll only give them a better excuse to buy more military hardware and more reasons to bring in martial law. The solution is a dissolution of the power and the legitimacy the police claim to have in the beginning. What I would like to see is worldwide, globally, police, members of the public, when a police officer walks up to your window and you're in a situation where you're dealing with a victimless crime, whether it's speeding, you didn't have your seatbelt on, any kind of traffic infractions and stuff like that, or jailed for having some marijuana on you, to look at that cop and shame him. To say, how dare you come up to my window and pull me over, trying to extort me for money. Get the hell out of here. Go find a better job, you parasite on society. And that disillusion of power and people waking up and realizing that these police officers are just road pirates. A parasite on society trying to generate revenue for themselves. That shaming effect and unacceptability of these police officers doing what they're going to do, and that's how you have change. So please, people, just wake up to the facts. Okay? It's out there. Google. You have a smartphone. Majority of people now have smartphones in their hands. So if you're ignorant to this information, if you're a lover of a cop in today's society, oh, well, not all cops are bad, Matt. You're just an idiot. You haven't spent the time and done the research. You've watched too many reality shows. You've drank too much fluoride. You had too much candy. Your brain is eroded. Because there's no debating it anymore that we do not live in a society with a severe policing problem. No one can debate that. I just showed you article after article. It's not debatable. The only thing up for debate is, will us as the people do something about it? And I hope so. I'm your host for Anarchist Revolution, Matt Hunter, signing off.